Hi, this is Alex Mahoney back again with Coda Financial Coaching, helping you achieve your dream of financial independence. And today I wanted to talk about the current Bitcoin craze. Bitcoin, it's back in the spotlight and it's riding a wave of optimism after recent election results and the promise that certain politicians have made that Bitcoin will be less regulated and promoted more. And in all this craze, it's really easy to feel like you're missing out, especially when headlines are screaming about record-breaking rallies. So before you dive into Bitcoin, first let's take a step back and reflect on some valuable lessons from history with past bubble. And of course, by bubble, I mean an asset that really isn't widely used or accepted as having inherent value, but its value just keeps on going up and up and up. And if you want to go back a little bit farther back in time, the tulip mania, that's a great example. In the Netherlands, a single tulip in the 1600s was worth more than a house. And eventually that bubble burst, leaving investors with flowers, but also with massive losses. More recently, if you want to look at more recent examples, the dot-com bubble in the 1990s. There were a lot of tech startups with no revenue that absolutely soared in value, and their products weren't really being used. And when the bubble popped, countless portfolios were decimated. Now, if that sounds familiar, a technology that isn't widely adopted but just keeps on going up and up in value, it should, because in my humble opinion, that is what Bitcoin is right now. And finally, if we want to go back to probably the most traumatic economic event that us millennials have experienced, the housing bubble. Everybody said that real estate prices could never fall, that no matter how many houses you owned, they were going to keep on going up, that people could put all their wealth in a house because it was a sure thing. Well, we all know how that happened, and bringing down pretty much the entire world's financial system for a few years. It took us about 4 years to recover from that fully, and we're still feeling the effects of that today, to be honest. So all of these have something in common with Bitcoin, in that their rise was fueled by what economists call irrational optimism. Probably better known in current parlance and the way current people talk as FOMO, fear of missing out. And while blockchain technology holds some promise, it isn't widely adopted. And this has been around for over 10 years now. It's not like this is something new. And we still don't make payments regularly in Bitcoin. So to me, that should be a red flag that this technology, it's fairly well known, understood, but it still hasn't been widely adopted, maybe in some pockets. And El Salvador, for example, the president down there has been doing a lot to promote it. But you can't just go to the store easily and whip out your Bitcoin wallet and pay for something. So you should keep that in mind when wanting to get on that train. So the other risk that I see is, despite what certain politicians have said about promoting Bitcoin and being on that train and letting people use it, there's still a lot of unpredictability about how governments are going to regulate cryptocurrencies and incorporate them into the banking system. So if you're wanting to adopt crypto just to avoid taxes or avoid the tracing of transactions, it could be that maybe in the future a good strategy, but I don't see any sign right now that cryptocurrencies are bulletproof from governments that are all too willing to go to extreme lengths to regulate transactions, much as they do with regular currency right now. And that, if governments really regulate that, the value of Bitcoin could sink very quickly here. And of course, Bitcoin, this all leads to the idea that Bitcoin is very speculative. Unlike stocks or bonds, where we know the company, we know they have revenue, we know that they're more or less established, even some of the newer tech companies that have done pretty well. Right now, Bitcoin doesn't, like I said, it doesn't produce income and it doesn't have intrinsic value because it's not widely adopted. And to me, Bitcoin is very fragile. Right now, people are going crazy about it because of the events of the last month, but they could easily sour on it for the reasons I just outlined regarding government regulations or the inability to pay vendors that we deal with in our everyday lives with Bitcoin. So having said all that, I know I'm probably not going to convince everybody not to invest in Bitcoin. And there's some of you out there that are saying that I'm a, Nancy negative, whatever you want to say. And I fully acknowledge that Bitcoin could achieve widespread adoption. I do not recommend to my clients investing in it, but I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know. But what I would recommend, if you must be in Bitcoin, if the FOMO is just too great for you, I do have a strategy I want to recommend to you, and it's called the barbell strategy. And this is not some obscure strategy. It's been adopted by lots of investors. And basically the idea is that you would take no more than 10 to 15% of your portfolio and invest it in Bitcoin, right? So that's still a good chunk. You're still putting a good chunk of your portfolio at risk, but if Bitcoin does crash for the reasons that I'm not bullish on it, then it's not going to devastate you. On the other hand, you put 80 to 85% of your investments in very safe investments. So we're talking about dividend paying stocks, bonds, and funds that really are on the safer side. So basically that's all to say, if you're taking a risk with Bitcoin, you shouldn't be taking a risk with other high growth stocks that are unproven. You have to choose what in your portfolio is going to be risky, and the rest of your portfolio is standard established stocks. We're talking about the Walmarts, the General Electrics, the Coca-Colas of the world that we know no matter what happens are going to do well. Or if you want to be more conservative and guard the rest of the value of your portfolio, even bonds. But the point is, you're ensuring that your portfolio is protected in case Bitcoin doesn't do well, but at the same time, you have enough invested in Bitcoin that if it does take off, your portfolio is still going to do very well. So that's what I wanted to say about Bitcoin. I personally don't recommend it, but I know there's some people that were going to have FOMO, and I also know that I'm not a fortune teller, and it could very well take off, and I could be missing out on the investment of a lifetime. But if you do, I recommend that barbell strategy. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you can DM me in my Instagram or my TikTok account, or make a comment on this YouTube video. All right. Happy investing, happy saving, happy budgeting, and I will talk to you later.